And I'm not sure.
Friday, 6 o'clock, call the meeting to order. For roll call, we have person Jeff Hance, Lampier, Edie Murphy, Steve Karani, Rose Perla, myself, and Tuck. Looks like online we have, okay, so Scott Kendall. Currently we're missing Rick and Tracy and Lisa Sanders.
She might be joining now.
I think Lisa.
She just joined online. Okay. Okay. All right. So it's just Rick and Casey. All right. So into approval of agenda, I have two things that I'd like to add. The first being, it's something that actually we had on our agenda for a while. We had a section for policy adopted during that meeting. It somehow has dropped off. So I just want to add that back in. If that's okay with everybody. It's just easier. record keeping. I'm going to put it probably in between public comments and the next meeting, just so it's like, and then moving forward, it'll just be on all of our agendas. That's okay. And then the other thing I wanted to do, and I think it was just an oversight, under old business, C, policy governance seems to, that was just kind of, being brought over every month in old business and it fell off. So if there's no objection to either of those, I'd like to just put those onto the agenda for today. Does anybody else have any additions or deletions? Okay, so if there's no objections, motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. And then, motion to approve the minutes from the December 19th meeting.
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. All right, so now we move into student reports.
Okay, so we have a new semester coming up. Our current semester is ending on the 24th, and there's going to be a proficiency makeup day where students can finish up any work or make up some of it that they still have to do. And then new classes will start on Monday the 27th. And basketball so far, the boys have a record of 6-4, and the girls are 5-3. There's been some pretty good games this season, so if you can make one, it's always fun to have the support from the community. The rock climbing team goes to competitions in Rutland every Wednesday, and lots of the middle schoolers have joined the team this year, and there's been a lot of improvement in the team since the start of the semester.
Student government has met and discussed the winter carnival for the Friday before February break. We're still trying to figure out some new activities to include for those days that students will be participating in. February break lasts from the 17th to the 21st this year, and students are going to be returning to school on the 24th. Ski Tuesdays began last week. Students involved in the program have been enjoying their Tuesday afternoons at Akima, and students not involved are still enjoying the half days. And the passes will be available to use next Tuesday during the in-service. So students are looking forward to having that day of ski. And I'm pretty sure the program's running for like 4 more weeks.
Questions for the students? You guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we'll move into administrator reports.
So hopefully folks are aware that the legislative session for this year started on January 8th. We do not have a good gauge yet on what they will be discussing in terms of specifics around education funding. Hopefully by the time that we meet again in February, things will be a little bit clearer. I typically don't put much stock in anything until March-ish because they change so much along the way. But obviously the two things they're probably going to be looking at is ways to improve the education funding formula and cost containment. In terms of district work, we're kind of at the midpoint, which the students were talking about, right? The semester is changing over. And so this is kind of will be the reflection time, starting with the next administrative meeting next Friday. where the administrators and myself will kind of take a look at what our goals are that support the continuous improvement plan, do our written reflections, make our plans to either focus a little bit more heavily on what we need to do to make the changes happen, or congratulate ourselves for the changes that have happened. Same is true for the teaching staff. In terms of other things that are happening around the district, we've had trouble this year finding coordinators for substitute teachers pretty much across the district. So the solution is that we'll be trying a program called Red Rover, which is an automated program for substitute teachers. Basically, the teachers in the morning get up, say they need a sub, upload their lesson plans, and then the substitute teachers will all get a ding on the app on their phone, and then they can open it up and check on it, then I accept it, and they show up. And so hopefully that's going to improve the process of getting subs. We've created a protocol for mass messaging that we're working on. It is meant to ensure that when we get messaging out to the community, it's going to as many people as possible. And then actually, this is one from the tech department here, which is really good. We talked a little bit about the website. The outreach group has been talking about seeing how people are using it. But we're finding that the TRSU website, not the school-specific ones, it's difficult to use. So we are probably going to swap it out for Google, which is what the school websites use. So it'll save a little bit of money because Google's free. I don't think we're paying a lot for the current one, like $1,600 a year. Yeah, but it's not user friendly. Then we did hire a new administrative assistant. As folks know, Kelly English has taken over the after-school program as the director. And Sydney Bonney will be starting on January 27th. And Kelly's been great. She's going to spend a little bit of time with him, getting him up to speed. We're going to kind of break out the first couple weeks for him and say, okay, this week you're working on warnings and board needs. And this week you're working on learning how to update the website. And so I think that'll work out pretty well. And that's about it, except for negotiations. At the last negotiation session with the teachers, we pretty much had exchanged proposals from both sides, and it was spent each side kind of explaining the rationale behind what they were asking for. So the next meeting will be on January 28th, and that should be the official start of actual negotiations. That's what I've got.
Any questions for Lane?
Just out of curiosity, that Red Rover, if a teacher, like, say they're have an emergency, do they have assistants to like upload their plans, or is that something like, I'm just curious. Can I go back?
Yeah, usually.
We have a folder of emergency sub-plans in the office, so even now, in the event a teacher is just absent and it's straight up emergency, we have emergency sub-plans which are sort of generic that are good to go, implement any day of the week.
Thank you. That was just my curiosity. I was like, what's in that?
Perfect.
Sounds great.
Any other questions? Right, the principal's reports are in the minutes. I don't know if you have an opportunity to look at them or if you have any questions. Is there anything that anyone wants to add to their reports?
I would just say I made a boo-boo in mine. I was talking about we're looking to hire a new sped teacher. That teacher will not go before this board. That teacher will go before the TRSU board. So sorry about that, my bad. When we're ready to put someone forth, that person will be in front of the TRSU board. Just gonna straighten that.
I have an update, actually. So in my report, I talked a little bit about the Green Mountain Preschool update and where we were in terms of phase 1, phase 2. Steph Raz and I have been working with Cheryl as well as Todd and Tony, our head custodian, to work with child care licensing department. And so they actually have a site visit scheduled as of today. They're coming on February 5th. And we've been, in discussion of sinks, how many sinks and how many toilets and things like that. So they're coming to make a site visit, so we can move to the next phase.
Cool. Yep. I've got one addition. Well, I can add it now, if that's okay. We're looking at adding back and bringing back students, bringing back intensive needs, some intensive needs students, and some out of district placement students returning to school, returning to their school for their education. And as well as this, teachers are another point that they're looking at the instruction design through a lot of department work, which Ms. Leith has been the spearhead on, doing a fantastic job with it through the PLC process to improve teaching and learning for all students.
Thank you. Any questions for our principals? And then curriculum reports and presentations.
So I think as folks know, Emma has taken over as principal at Cavendish, which left the curriculum director's position open. TRSU did hire a curriculum director about a week ago, Louisa Millington, and Louisa is not related. As far as we can tell, if I remember the stories my grandmother told me, there were two Millington brothers after the Revolutionary War that settled in Vermont, one up north, one down south. I'm from the northern clan. It sounds like her husband is probably from the southern clan, but they've never interacted anyway. Regardless of that, I recused myself from the process. So the group that was there, Joey, did a really good job of leading things up and keeping folks through the process and making the decision. She has a Vermont curriculum director's license. She has 3 or 4 degrees, including a doctorate. Broad work experience, which includes research and teaching at the college levels. She's been a principal, she's been a curriculum director, she's been a grant manager, and so she's really, really well suited for the position. She's already kind of up and running, and thanks to the support of Emma and Julie especially, she just got out the agenda for the professional development day on the 21st. So she's kind of stepped in and is moving forward with the support that these two are offering. So thank you very much. And come February, she will be the one giving you the report. 21st Professional Development Day, there are outside presenters that are coming in. We've got a person coming in from the Stern Center who's going to work with the K-6 teachers on early literacy. And there is a presenter that is coming in for mathematics to work with the teachers on math learning progressions. So it should be a good day. The other piece and the last piece is that Emma, especially when she started off this year, heard the concerns of the specialist faculty that typically when professional development was happening, would just get lumped in with the teachers, even though they have their own specific needs. So each of those specialist group, the librarians, the special education teachers, the paraprofessionals, PE teachers, art teachers, they now all have their own professional learning communities and we'll be working in those at that meeting. So it should be a good day for all.
Any questions? Okay, right into TRSU facilities report.
Okay, good evening, everybody. I don't have much tonight. In February 8th, 9th, and 10th, Harper will be back to do another round of indoor air quality testing. Last year, we were excited, nervous, but because it was the first time they were doing testing when the building was all closed up and we came through in pretty good shape. I don't expect anything different. I'm thinking the filters are doing everything that they are meant to do. They operate along, so I just don't foresee any problems, but we just don't know. They will be back over February break in between the 17th and 21st of February to do some more source testing. This is mandated by the state. The state has asked them to come in and do some more testing to make sure there's no more sources of PCBs that they can find before they move forward with any mitigation. And we're going to keep the lawyers on both sides, Monsanto and ours, well informed, so everybody's playing on the same playing field. We do have an update from FEMA, but I'm gonna leave that with Cheryl because it kind of falls into the financials, so I'll let Cheryl explain that. Cavendish, like Emma said, we're gonna meet with the childcare licensing unit on February 5th. I just want to make sure we know that could trigger that I'm coming and asking you for money for capital improvements. Depends on what they say on what the preschool needs for bathrooms. That may be a little bit too big of a project for, Tony to absorb in the Cavendish budget on maintenance, so maybe asking just a heads up. And the last thing I have is, it has been 3 years, seems like a year, but it's been 3 years since we did the lead water testing for our schools. So that's begun. The state sent that out. Been working with and the principals and the facility supervisors to get those samples ordered and get the testing. All the paperwork should all be the same. Everybody passed, and a couple taps here and there in some schools, but nothing that deemed our water not able to drink. So it's more or less a formality, but it has to be done every 3 years. So we have started that. It has to be done by June. It's in pretty good shape. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
We, in the budget, maybe that's a better time to talk about it. We had preschool startup costs.
40,000.
So would that not be included in that?
That'd be a Cheryl question.
It depends on the timing of them doing it.
If they want to do the work prior to July 1st, it would have to come from current budget.
Okay.
And we may not need anything. I just want to give everybody a heads up that we may see that. Depends on what they tell us that we need for preschool for bathrooms and sinks.
So you don't even have like a guesstimate?
We don't know. We'll wait and see what they have to say.
And I think it's really like it's the kindergarten and preschool that we are like getting information about too, because there's certain requirements for kindergarten, certain requirements for preschool, and so that's what sort of things we can get clarity on that, but we should know by the 5th on the 5th.
Okay. Okay.
So are we looking at a potential reduction in that 40,000 estimate for starting with the preschool if they can do the work?
We don't even know what we're up against,
Okay.
so I think it's better to leave that.
They're probably going to find other things that need to be adjusted as well. And then one of the other things that we have to consider is, a small amount of playground equipment for kids that are that tall. Because they use something different, which is what the 40,000 was partially for as well.
I have a question about the source testing. Are
Yeah.
they going to be testing new locations that haven't been tested before? Or are they going to be retesting what they tested before?
So usually I would say we should direct those questions to them, but I do know some of them, it's gonna be a little bit of both.
Okay.
They're gonna go back and retest some paint in some stairwells, and they're gonna do some new, they're gonna test some new samples.
Okay, thank you.
All good?
Any other questions? All right.
Thanks, so.
Let's move into a financial update and folding it into budget, or we just.
We'll roll right
Yeah.
into it after. So the December financials in the folder, we're at 41.33% spent, which is good because our teacher pay is at the end. So we always want to be a little bit under where the 50% mark would be. The big line that's over is repairs and maintenance for the high school. And that is, Todd has told you that's for the repair of the boiler. And right now he's still within his budget, but as we get closer to the end of the year, we may have a different conversation about taking some out of capital to keep the budget. But for right now, we're good. I have learned a lot in the last 3 days since we met about funding and how we do it. And I got an update from Thad that was here today, here on Monday, and that there's a $30 million USDA, look at the name of it, rural entities, including schools. We fit in there with water waste treatment plants. And so it's an application process. This is specific to Vermont. First come, first serve. And they are going to have someone help me fill out that application. And so we're going to start doing that next week. There are a few things, we have to make sure that we're protected within the 500 level, which I'm assuming he means 500-year flood. I don't know why we've had 100 years in 2 years, so maybe we'll have a different meeting. But he seemed very excited about it, really felt that it would cover the difference between what FEMA would pay and what the actual cost of the building.
And if it covers all of the cost of it, does it supplant FEMA funds? So that's all.
No.
So we could still get the FEMA funds too.
What's the name of that? Rural what?
Rural entities, USDA funds for rural entities. So Thad was very excited, and I'm sure you noticed when he was here on Monday, he talks very fast, and he talks with a lot of acronyms. So I was trying to listen because we were on Zoom. So we're gonna meet again next week. I just asked Lane, how do we get this ball rolling? It is rolling at this point.
Okay.
So in saying that, what I found out about a loan is that you don't need board approval if it's a one-year loan, which we can't do that. We potentially could do that. Anything greater, let's see. The bank won't give us anything more than a 10-year loan. But after a 5-year loan, you have to do a bond. Anything greater than a 5-year loan, you have to do a bond. They do have loans that are like a line of credit for a grant that you know you're gonna have. So there's a lot of moving parts with this. Lane and I did make the decision to put the payment in there for a 10-year loan. Then this other conversation happened with FEMA. If we get the USDA grant, it will be given to the state and we get to draw it down as we spend it. So there's no lag time in the money. The FEMA is what the lag time is going to be because we have to do the work and then ask for reimbursement. So there's still a lot of unknown, but now there's a lot that we know as well. Next week we'll start meeting, we'll meet for the application, and then I think as a district team, start coming up with what exactly that building might look like, what we need to do, because we need to know for this application. We don't have to have details, but we have to have some information on that. So we'll start working on that.
In terms of FEMA, if we take a loan, we have, FEMA is out there to participate later on, correct? When,
So
no,
yes, but the thing that we just don't know is the consistency and, that's not the word I want, the timing of when FEMA's gonna reimburse us. And so if we take a loan, we're gonna have to carry that interest while we wait for
until
FEMA,
we get paid.
you know? So the scenario might be is that what we take for a loan is what that FEMA money is. And then we have the grant money that we can draw down for the rest. But right now it's still a lot of unknown.
So you guys decided to do a 10-year loan, but you said greater than 5 needs a bond.
So we put in money into the budget, or Cheryl put money into the budget options that you're going to look at tonight to cover the first payment for next year. In case that's the route that we go, because you did vote at the last meeting to, in terms of the restructuring piece, in terms of doing the construction. So this is making sure we have available what we need to get that started.
For the loan payment, but what's the part about the bond? That's what I'm not following.
So if we take a loan for greater than 5 years, we would have to go through a process of getting a bond, is what I understood from the attorney.
So then you can't do a 10-year loan.
Right.
So we have.
But we
to-
could
You
do
have
it.
to do a 5-year loan or a bond.
Yeah. So they told me to reach out to the bond bank, and I just haven't had time to do that.
Okay.
You know, we were reacting to information as we were getting it, and it
Yeah.
was changing throughout the day.
Because the big question was, you know, if we get that FEMA reimbursement and we took a loan, it'd be great to pay it back early.
Right, yeah.
And so the bonds, potentially that's not possible. And so Cheryl, actually, we're both tired, so we're covering for each other today here. Cheryl, as I talked about this morning, that, you know, when she checks in about the bonds, is going to see if there is a type that we can actually get back early.
Okay. Yeah, because I think that we were all kind of hoping to avoid bonds.
Yes,
to avoid-
yeah, so are we. And I think too, this process is gonna, we have time to kind of figure this out. Unfortunately, we don't have time to make a decision on what we put into the budget right now.
So you've allotted a line item for at least the first year's loan and.
Yeah. Adrian Scott's hands up.
Thank you. Scott?
for the loan, what's the rate? And then my next question is for FEMA, if we take a loan out and then FEMA has to reimburse us, do they cover that interest rate in?
No.
Okay,
And we based it on 4%.
okay. Thank you.
So we also based it on the full amount. We may not have to do the full amount if we get the USDA grant.
And then if it becomes that we don't need the money that we set aside for payment, then that would be surplus, could go into the reserve fund or roll into the next year to subsidize taxes for the next budget year.
But we could potentially, yeah, we got too many scenarios.
Yeah, basically just covering your bases at this point. Yeah.
I've got a lot of thoughts running through my head, but you know, it's a lot of what if right now, or if this, then that, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions about the financial update? Okay, so we'll move into the budget discussion.
So we did follow, the board had asked in the previous meeting, which feels like it was 2 years ago, but it was what, 2 days? To take a look at two options, which Cheryl has been fantastic. She's been running numbers for 2 weeks straight now, which we'll discuss. But before we get started, and I'm gonna be playing on this statement probably all year so that I can try to get the entire community to understand it, is the education funding piece. And you're gonna see some of what I'm talking about when we take a look at these two options. Again, the idea that because we pay to help out all the districts in the state, and all the districts pay for all the other districts in the state, we all pay for each other, that when a district cuts its expenses, all the districts in the state benefit from it, which means there's a very low impact. It's a very small change, even though you may make catastrophic cuts in your budget. It's a very small change in local tax rates. But the reverse is also true, and so a lot of districts try to take advantage of that, which is if you increase your expenses, increase your spending, it is spread out across all the taxpayers in the state. So you will see a small increase in your tax rates, but the burden is borne by everybody. So they'll actually be picking up pretty much more of the tab than we will. So that's an important concept to kind of remember as we go into this budget discussion. And I may stand up so I can stay awake here. The largest factor that's impacting next year's budget right now was the $500,000 in one-time money that was used to reduce last year's ask from the taxpayers. Right, you guys were in a tough spot. The budget had failed, and folks were trying to get things down to a level that the taxpayers would vote for. So it was a good decision. But the problem is, and I'll use Kelly Tarbell's analogy, is that this is what you needed for expenses. You had a coupon that took care of 500,000 of it. You have the same expenses next year, but you don't have the coupon. And so you're going to have to make up for that $500,000 in the regular budget, which is one of the reasons that you don't have a huge shift compared to most districts around the state this year, but you got a sizable in terms of tax rates.
Burlington had a $3 million that they used in reserve.
Yeah. And if there's questions along the way, just interrupt me. So the two budget options that the board had asked for was option one was what was called the excellence budget. And so that was all the things that we originally asked for that we felt were necessary to really advance in terms of achieving the goals in the continuous improvement plan. Option two is what was called the level service budget, but it's going to include the provisions in case the federal grants are reduced. Level service, just so people understand what that means. If you have level funded, it means you're using the same amount from the previous year into the next year. Level service means that your amount is going to go up, but just enough to make sure that you're maintaining the same staff and programs as you had in the previous year. So there is an increase, but it's usually not that great. And then in the options that we have up there, both of them include the preschool at Cavendish.
Can I ask a quick question? Do both of them include this first year loan payment as well?
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you.
And the way that it was asked, they both contain, the contingency for the federal grant if there's a cut.
So can I ask a question about that? Because I guess I don't think I really understood it on Monday. The budgeting for the reductions is putting in a placeholder for those reductions. What happens if they don't actually happen?
So if we put money in and they don't happen, it ends up being surplus. You can put it into a reserve fund, or you can roll it over to support the taxes in the following year. One of the things that I would recommend, and we did a pretty good job, they actually started it before I got there, but we expanded upon it, was if you've got a reserve fund, is trying to keep about $1.5 million in there. The reason being is that, you've got some critical things that may blow up mid-year. And this way we don't have to scramble around and figure out how to fund it in the middle of the school year while the kids are waiting for the school to get back into operation. But you also have things about the buildings that on a regular cycle need to be replaced. And the one I always use is roofs. Roofs are 20 years. 20 years, you got to replace a roof. And so it's nice to have enough money in there to be able to replace one of the roofs without having to go out to bond or having to ask the taxpayers. So even though this is, potentially increasing the tax rates by 2 or 3 cents, it's for a good reason, right? So if these things don't come through, the money's not going to waste. We can put it in the facilities reserve, or if it's important, you can roll it over to reduce people's tax rates in the fall. So good question.
Yeah, the difference between the excellence budget and the level service budget, as I recall from Monday, was just the halftime math teacher.
Now, we'll show you. The slides will put it out. So in terms of the excellence budget, that list on the side, those were the things that earlier in the year, we said, this is discretionary spending. These are the things that we would like to add to make sure that we're able to achieve the goals that the community and the district has for the schools. And so that excellence budget includes all of these things, right? And so it's about 415,000 addition to the current budget if we accept this. If we do that, if we go that path, and again, remember that you got that first year payment in there as well. You also have the contingency in case the federal grants are cut. This is how things would kind of shake out. And we added all the extra digits this time on the dollars.
Before you go too far,
Yep.
there's 2 bus drivers on that last one. Is
Yeah,
that?
should be
It's
one.
only added in once.
Okay.
Okay,
Did I say 2?
It was on there twice.
it's on there twice.
Oh, sorry about
So
that.
it's up there as a full-time FTE, and then at the bottom, it's there again.
Yeah, there's only one of
Just
them.
one?
Yep.
Okay, but the number at the bottom is correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so good eyes. And again, since it was kind of brought up, the bus driver, that was probably the biggest complaint I've heard from the community members as I've walked around, is that, it would be great if our ability to get the buses out on the road every day were a little bit more consistent. So that would help with this. It would provide us with a sub, actually to support both districts, TRSU and Green Mountain. In case somebody is out, we've got a sub that we can put in and make sure the buses keep running. So current tax year, this is the year that we are in. And you see what the tax rates are for each of the 4 towns in the district. What these numbers mean, right? For Andover, the current year tax rate is $1.78. Vermont's weird, it uses $100 instead of $1,000 like most states do. For every $100 of value of your property, you pay $1.78 in taxes. And so Baltimore, right, $1.28 for every $100 of value. Cavendish, $1.72 for every $100 of value of your property, and Chester, $1.60. If we go to option 1, this $1.78 for Andover goes to $2 for $100 of assessed value. And probably the easier way to think about it is if we convert it, that means for every $100,000 of value in your property, you're going to pay $224 additional dollars in taxes under option 1. Right? Baltimore's funny. They're only 32, but that's because they're already paying higher taxes because their assessments were done and their assessments went up. Cavendish, right, 307 per $100,000 of assessed value, and the same for Chester. And so that would be the impact of putting option one in place.
Can I just clarify in my own mind that taxes per $100,000, that's not an increase over this year, that's total?
No.
No, that's the increase.
220, the 224.
Yeah. So if I have a $200,000 home, my taxes are going to go up by twice
Go
this.
up by twice that. Okay, thank you.
But you're also going to see the next option in a minute and see what the change is if you cut all that stuff out that we just talked about.
Is it gonna go up by that much, or that's what it's gonna be?
Up by
gonna be up by
that,
that
so what
much.
you're already paying
Yeah.
plus.
Oh, okay.
And one of the things to remember, like we were talking about earlier, was that, yeah, you know, if you cut a whole bunch of stuff, your tax rates are going down. They might not be $224, but you could decimate your schools and they're still gonna be like 200. And so that's why it's important to consider this. Yeah.
I love your graphics.
I was seeing if anybody would pick up on that one.
Well, we got it.
Anybody?
So if we cut all these things out, we get that back down to what we call level service, right? So we get back down to just an increase that covers all the things that we have to do that are mandatory, right? Pay for the step increases that we guaranteed folks in the contract, whatever comes out of negotiation, changes in the cost of utilities, those sorts of things, to keep us kind of where we're at programmatically and with staff this year. And so that's getting rid of pretty much all the discretionary except for the preschool. And so you cut that out and this is how things change. So option two, all right, Andover, your tax rate's going to go to $1.96 basically, and you're going to be paying $177 more for 100,000 value in your property. And I'll let you guys take a look at that. Right, Baltimore does well, but it's because they're already paying higher taxes. And Cavendish and Chester are about the same.
Lisa's hand is up. Lisa?
Yeah, can I just ask what the amount of the yearly loan payment is? In both of these budgets?
So to go to the 10-year, it was 228,931.
$228,921.
Correct. 931. I don't.
So one of the things to think about, and again, we're a smaller district, so we are a little bit more sensitive to tax rate changes than a larger district would be. But 307, 260, about a $50 difference. So the difference between option one and option two in terms of the taxpayer in town is $50 per 100,000. You know, average home 300,000-ish, you know, you're talking $150 to the average taxpayer. And, you know, the example I use is I've got an average home in Randolph and my taxes are like 11 grand. And so, you know, if I'm looking at, you know, $1,000 increase, does $150 really, is it even a drop in the bucket? And so this is the choice that the community is going to need to make, is, okay, yeah, we're stuck with this increase because with an increase, a big one, because we don't have a lot of control over our own budget. You know, you got about $150 on the average homeowner in terms of control. Is cutting that $150 or even more worth what might happen to the schools if you do? So I think that's the question that the taxpayers are going to have to ask themselves when they go to vote. Yeah.
And then the budget that you proposed that we saw on Monday is somewhere in the middle of this, right?
Questions on? And then if we
Doing some math. So, if you're saying like an average home is 300, I don't know, like, and I'm not asking people to disclose like what their what they're actually paying. But so for, say, Cavendish at 260 for a $300,000 home, their taxes would go up about $780
Total.
total. So on top of, I just want, because I feel like we're kind of like bouncing between, you know, like these minuscule numbers and then, you know, like.
Yep.
The big number is a big number.
So it's,
Yeah.
Almost a grand for most towns.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's gonna go up a lot, and so the question is, even if you started to go into the staff that are here and your programs that are here, you're still gonna be going up about $1,000 or 800. Is the effect or the impact on the district and on the kids, is it worth saving that $150, $200 for most taxpayers? Like I said, and it depends on the taxpayer. Yeah.
And also these, especially the option one budget, both of these budgets have, some money built in. It seems like it might not need to be used. It can be put into reserves. Would you agree that it makes more sense to do that now if this is a trend that's just gonna keep going up?
Well, the piece that I think you're hitting a really good point. I can't say if next year it's gonna go up more, it's gonna go down, because we gotta wait until the governor does his address. How many weeks, what do you say, 6 weeks? Is that conveniently after you have to vote on your budget?
How about that?
But we should have hopefully a clearer picture, come the end of the legislative session. So we don't know what's gonna happen. And typically, if you're not sure what's gonna happen, I would recommend you stay the course. What would you normally do?
Well, we wouldn't normally budget for federal cuts of however many hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
We would normally count on that.
Yeah.
So that feels really terrible. Just saying.
I'm kind of hoping that, we're planning for the worst and, hoping for the best, and somewhere in between, like, we're not gonna lose all of the federal funding. I'm hoping that there'll be some sort of middle ground that's reached. I think, speaking solely for myself, I never want to not support our children, and I worry deeply about our buildings. I really do. I think the thing that I hear the most from, just casual conversation is, and I feel like that's going to be something that's going to come up when we start our messaging, is people are concerned about the kind of education, like the level of education students are getting. They're like, it's almost a song. Our taxes going up and their grades are going down. And I don't know how to answer that. And I feel like that's something that we need as a board, as administration, to be able to start addressing and answering. Because if we're going to keep asking for more, I think we need to start producing more.
It goes back to the legislators. So the January report that I put out is I put in there like 15 things that has been added to the plates of schools over the last 3 years. Right, from, graduation proficiency, standards-based report cards, and the immense amount of work that it took to do those things. They were designed to make sure that across the state, scores went up, have they? So every time we're stuck, and I'm gonna put it in blunt terms, because I've seen the trend that happened in Massachusetts 10 years earlier, and now it's happening in Vermont. If they stop wasting our time with things that don't work and allow us to focus on what is most important, which is teaching and learning, and drop the rest and take care of the things that it is a state's responsibility to take care of, our scores will go up. You have fantastic teachers here. Matter of fact, they had fantastic teachers in Randolph and most of the places I've been, but you defeat an army by dividing it. And every time they come up with 3 or 4 more things every year, which they do, for us to get engaged in, which has nothing to do with what's going on in the classroom, we're divided and we get conquered.
Is there a way as a board that we can support or get in front of some of those things and say, we want our teachers and administrators to be focused solely on or predominantly on academics. So we as a board say, no, we're not doing this. I don't know how much is mandated legally. I don't, but are there areas that we can be more aggressive and make decisions that may go against the grain, but would be beneficial for our teachers?
I think, so this is a bigger discussion. Because the board could, right? You send them a "what's the matter with you" letter, right?
Yeah.
But the mantra in the state of Vermont, and again, my own opinion, has been that, oh, we all have local control. No, you don't. But because you believe you have local control, you don't go after the people who actually do have control. Right? And so it's changing that mentality of, yeah, we really don't have a lot of control over our own school budgets. Even though, when folks are standing up there, it's, oh, school's got to cut, school's got to cut. It's like, yeah, we can cut all we want. You did it last year. What was the effect of it? Ludlow Mount Holly was funny. They were like, yeah, we closed down Black River and we're not any better off than we were. It didn't change a darn thing because it's got to happen statewide for any major changes to happen. But yeah.
But
It's a good discussion.
I'm talking more about like teachers being asked to be social workers and teachers being asked to be, therapists
What did
and
we do
medical
during
doctors and like
COVID?
all of these extra things. Sorry.
What did we do during COVID?
Also,
I had to, and the superintendents around the state, so this isn't a gripe, it's meant to make sure that people understand. I had to go through a long process with the federal government with a really wicked sort of background check so that our school could be designated as a lab that is capable of handling human samples. I got the certificate and I'm keeping it in my book to remember when I'm 90 years old. But that's the level of the work that we had to do. While they're griping at us, why aren't you getting your scores up? And we're feeding people and we're transitioning to online learning and
But that's what I'm asking. And I know it's not the budget and we need to probably get back to that, but that's what I'm asking. Was that a law? Or was that something that our board could say, yeah, we're not doing that. We're going to continue to focus on this. I mean, I know that's a big example with the COVID issue, but like, I feel like maybe we could start that trend of taking more control back at our boards.
You could probably do it in conjunction with the town. Because it's bigger than the schools, because you can't say we're just going to stop, providing wellness or mental health to kids until you build a structure somewhere else that can take it over. And that's the short-sightedness of the government here is they, like I was saying, they always do it backwards, right? They treat the symptoms and not the cause. You build a structure first that's going to support the change you're going to make, and then you make the change. And we get change after change after change, and no structural support, usually no funding.
I do think it is potential a budgetary question though, because even if things are mandated, like most of these things are mandated, or you're like, I couldn't ethically not do it. Are there things that we can put in the budget that will actually make it so our teachers can focus on teaching? I just think like my business, we have the same issue,
Yep.
same governor making the same budget. And we've had to build, a department that handles the quality and compliance to let our therapists focus on therapy so that they don't have to
do
focus
that.
on all of the change management and all of the rules and regulations. And it has paid for itself because our therapists are able to do therapy as opposed to all the other things.
So you built the structure first to
We
be
did,
able to
yes.
take over the work that you didn't want the therapist to do.
Correct. And so I'm asking, is there anything in our budget that we should be adding to build structure internally to be able to do that so that our,
But was there a
Educators
revenue
can
that
make-
came in for you guys? Like, we're not going to have revenue.
Yeah.
there is, that's
So,
true.
You know.
That is true.
But we could, again, the town would have to be invested in it and there's cost.
Yeah.
And they're cutting the grants supposedly next year that would support some of these structural changes. But most towns, what they do, outside of Vermont, is the towns will have outreach workers, right? And so they'll be able to go into the home, they'll be able to provide mental health services in the home. They'll be able to coordinate services from the social agencies that are in the town and in their state. Of course, the state doesn't have any because they don't have the structures.
We have those in our region.
So,
Work at my agency.
so that would take a lot of that burden off the schools to be able to have to provide that. Doesn't mean we're gonna reduce it down to nothing. But again, the goal is taking that weight off the teachers so that they can focus on what's important. Because if you're spending 80% of your time doing everything else and 20% of your time teaching, your score is going to be low. So anyway.
Just because you get us back in the
Andrew has
business of
something.
education.
Scott has something.
I'm sorry,
I think Scott has something.
Scott?
I've said it a million times, remove Act 46.
Easy peasy. Okay, all right, well, sorry, back to budget. Take us.
So the first thing, if you get to it, and I don't want to throw Cheryl under the bus, but she's got her spreadsheet sheet here. If you decide that you wanted to see some examples of, take this out, put this in, what would the effect be? So hopefully, there's a budget decision on something tonight, but the other thing that you'll have to decide on is what to do with your surplus. So these surplus and reserves are funky because they the conversation about them kind of crosses 2 or 3 years. So at the end of 2022, 23, you had 1.2 million in surplus. You rolled $500,000 of it into this current year to reduce people's taxes that they paid this year, their tax rates. And you have $773,507 that are left over that you got to decide what to do with. And so the choices are, and you talked about them the other day, right? You can roll that money into next year, kind of, give them a $773,000 coupon. You can vote to put it into the facilities reserve fund, or you can kind of split it up into a combination of the two. And what Cheryl and I have kind of talked about this year is that once you decide what you want to do with this, it would go on the warning as a vote. Right, so the community actually has an article on there that says, does the community of Chester support the movement of $500,000 in surplus funds into a facilities reserve fund? And they would literally vote on that to move the money over. And then it protects you a little bit, right? Because once the communities have decided what they're doing with their tax money, then the state can't come in and grab it.
And if they said no?
So that's where making them understand, the biggest piece is making them understand that this is money we already have. We're
Right.
not asking you for more. So one of the last things that I typically do before the folks go and vote, is I do a little article that says, okay, if you vote yes on Article 1, this is what it means. If you vote yes on Article 2, this is what it means. So they literally could take it with them to the polls and say, oh, when I'm voting on what they're doing with the surplus, oh, I realize it's money we already have, and they're just putting into account to make sure that we can do some facilities work on the building in the future.
Right, that's
If
a
they
great
say-
strategy, but what if they say no?
It just remains in our,
It just remains.
surplus.
It's not like it's gonna go back in.
No.
But then it's.
It doesn't become the
accessible to
coupon.
It's,
no,
no, but if they made legislation to claw that back, potentially. Right, because they had discussions in previous years about clawing back reserve funds from districts.
Right, so that would potentially, if it's voted down, stay in surplus and you could still roll it into the capital fund or vote.
And
no.
But
Well, you'd have to put it into your budget.
that's what I was gonna say.
But once you put it into the budget, this is how the language is. If we put it in our budget, even though the taxpayers vote on it, they can still claw it back. If we have the taxpayers vote on it specifically to go into a facilities reserve, they
That's
can't.
protected.
And so that's the strategy that we're trying to take by having it as a separate article.
The other option would be just to use it to buy a building just or under and count on FEMA reimbursements. It would not be part of it.
Yeah,
There'd
that,
be no interest.
more or less what I was gonna ask, if it was rolled into this budget that we're talking about right now, that doesn't have to get voted on. It's a separate-
Yeah, that you can just do.
Worst case scenario, we do a big spend, and deficit spend, use it.
Scott's got his hand up.
Scott?
Don't you, I mean, I know we got a lot of things going on, like in our buildings that could break down. I mean, I'm one of the big pushers for having a surplus. I'm also nervous. I mean, I know we're talking about it, but I'm also nervous that, what if the state changes rules and they can try to yank it from us? But I guess what I'm saying is my personal opinion, I would like to have some money on hand in a reserve that the board votes on where it gets spent, every penny. And that way, if we have a boiler blow up or a door on a gymnasium that needs to be replaced or something, we have some money, because if we take a loan out and then we have to take another loan out, we're going to look real bad.
May need you for this question, Todd. Didn't we have a fire thing coming up that was gonna be exceptionally pricey?
It is, the architect, we expect those plans this week. The architect has been working on those and that will be bid ready. And we'll expect those to go out in February, and we should see the bids come back by March, which will give them enough time to order the equipment. I'll have a number for you.
So what would be the best way for us to keep that money for that project? Because you told us it was going to be an ugly ask.
It is.
Like $700,000 ugly?
No, I don't believe that.
That's how much money it's.
Yeah.
We have the moving.
Well,
parts.
well, no, I don't believe that. I don't, but I really don't want to give a number because I don't know, because it has to go out to bid. No, I mean, if you have that much money in that capital reserve, is it gonna cover that? Yes, it's gonna cover that.
I mean, I would like, obviously, to come up with. I'm just thinking of like, things that we know are going to be expensive that are coming. Is there a way for us to, make sure that money goes nowhere and is utilized for that so that we're not going out for another bond, we're not asking for, I don't know. I mean,
We're
that's,
putting it into that reserve.
it would just be there for that.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, like we talked about, right, that door project isn't gonna be, that's a life service, safety service, where that's gonna be, yes, here you go, unfortunately.
And again, I may be a little bit foggy. Did we talk a little bit about, the odds of it happening would be slim, but potentially asking for a waiver because we don't know what's gonna happen with the building or?
Unfortunately, that, like I reported, that initial report came out in 2012 or 14.
Yeah, so it's just-
I don't remember the date. So then they came back and pretty much we got the same report again.
Yeah.
The fire marshal is not gonna give us a waiver for another 2 years because they know it's unsafe and God forbid something happens and we are not code compliant, then.
Isn't there a rule in place where if Todd needs more than $15,000 or $30,000 out of the capital, he needs board approval? Or do you just ask regardless?
If I need, if it's gonna be a direct impact to the budget, then I will, it's like somebody's budget, like the painting project at Cavendish. He couldn't absorb that, so I came and asked for the board to pay for it out of capital improvement, or that door project that you just approved for here. It's over 40,000, Jeff, it has to go out to bid.
Oh, okay, that's where I'm, okay.
Yes, but it could be, I could ask you guys for $10,000 out of capital improvement, depending on where our budget is, like Cheryl said. My budget took a big hit with the boiler problem that we had here not long ago, so maybe in the spring, maybe something small that happens here that, usually I don't come to you for that, but it's either deficit spend out of my budget or come to you and ask for a capital improvement.
And the reserve fund, so you're on a good point. If you vote for the money to go into the reserve fund, the only people who can release it is the board. So it's not like I can say, oh yeah, we got to pay it, so Cheryl and I are going to sign off on it. Because you are the oversight. When the community votes to put it in the facilities reserve fund, they're saying you have to use it for facilities.
Right.
And so you're the oversight to make sure that the district does that. But anytime I would argue that you're using money out of the budget for something that's unexpected or for something that wasn't originally budgeted for, there's a responsibility to at least have a conversation about it here for transparency to the community about, what we're using the money for. Because that's the purpose of the budget, is to tell them what we're going to do with their money.
It does feel like with large expenses coming up that we're gonna take a loan out on and have interest to pay on it, that large amount of money would go towards that rather than taking a loan, and wouldn't that reduce our budget? Would increase our budget and reduce our budget. I hate that. I learned that accountants are artists. You guys consider yourself artists? Art of accounting. No, that's a question though, like putting it into like you said, about the project at CAES.
Right.
That would reduce the loan payment, reduce the interest, and spend the money.
It
so
would,
nobody
and then
else can
when
take
we
it
get,
back.
and then when
when we
FEMA
get
reimbursed, we put it
Then
back
it put
in.
in the capital reserve. That feels logical.
how much would we earn percentage wise? Because I think we're allowed to safely invest the money like a CD or something, right? You know, how much could we potentially earn on, you know, $750,000 in a short-term CD?
Yeah.
It's just an interest rate now?
That's, if you can claw it back, then that's the law.
Well, I'm worried our budget isn't going to pass, so getting the budget down is.
Yeah, it is. You know, we're talking theoretically
It's still
possible.
scary.
That's a question.
Sorry. If we were to use that 700,000 to go right into that building project, reducing the amount of a loan that we would need to take out, would that need approval from the town? Just out of curiosity.
If we put it through the budget into capital?
What do you mean, if we take the 700,000?
Use it to supplement whatever we get from USDA in terms of money now to pay for the addition project. That might get you, that's gonna get you most of the way there, I would imagine.
That and the loan payment you already have in there.
I mean, who knows what the USDA stuff is.
Yeah, I think it's still the best route, but we'd have to think about it and check. Would be to have the community voted into the reserve fund so they know what it's being used for. Sure. And then the board can vote when the time comes to use it for that purpose.
Okay.
The only thing that, and Todd wants to talk, I think the only thing I want to make sure though is that we have enough for like the impending things that. we
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I'm-
like boiler.
I like the
Well,
that's
that's Todd first.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question, Cheryl. I mean, I know the part of the answer. The FEMA money is reimbursable. It's gonna be reimbursed at some point, correct? So when we're talking about this 700,000, if it gets paid towards that loan, we're gonna get that money back at some point,
Yes.
right? Then what do we do with that money? I think that would be, and we don't know when it's gonna come. Could come 6 months from now, could come 5 years from now, correct?
So your question, I don't know what your question is.
Well, I mean, if we
Put it in the reserve
use
fund.
700,000 to pay down the loan, and then we get it 6 months later, they reimburse us for it, then what happens to it? What happens to that money then? Does it have to, do we have to go back out and vote and find out where we can put that money or what we do with it?
It would be a revenue, and so I'm taking my best stab at it. It would be a revenue in the budget year that we received the money. If it were unspent at the end of the year, it would be surplus, and then people could vote to put it into the reserve fund or to roll it into the next year.
That'd probably be the cleanest way to do it.
But if we used all that and didn't put anything in capital reserve and we got it in the same budget year, we couldn't use that money for capital improvements or capital reserve in that same
Well, if we
budget.
got it in the same year, we would use it.
You could.
You could.
Once you cross the budget line, so let's say we get it in March, as long as we spend it before July 1st, we're golden. Once you cross that line, it becomes surplus, and then you gotta decide what you're gonna do with it through this process. She's thinking.
Well, you talk about paying it toward the loan, but we just wouldn't take the loan. We would use the reserve money instead, and that would save us the interest payment.
Right, but that 700,000 wouldn't cover the whole thing.
Still have to take a small.
You don't know, it hasn't gone out to
But
bid.
we have 260 whatever
They always come in lower.
that payment that we have in there too, which
And
gives us
then the
most of it.
USDA money potentially.
And that's not reimbursement, that's
Correct.
they put it in the bank for you and you use it as you need it.
That's right.
If we don't build our reserve from where it is, what are we looking at? If we, like,
You could luck out and have no problems for 50 years, but I doubt it.
no, I mean, it's been clear that that's not the
It's not what's
direction
gonna
we're
stop what's
heading in.
coming.
And that's why I'm worried about, obviously there's concern that the state could potentially claw back reserve funds. Again, it sounds like that would be a really boneheaded move. But we've got these things that are looking like they're, we have a door project from the fire marshal that's mandatory fund. We have to do it and have to pay for it. And the boilers, even with the work being done, are still a very precarious situation, right? That we're likely gonna be footing a large bill for, so I don't wanna drain that reserve fund. And get caught, as Lane said, mid-semester, dump the school because we can't heat it. And then we got kids in canvas tents or something.
So currently there's, I think, 500,000, is that what I told you? For this year capital, we have another 400 budgeted for next year.
Okay.
And then we have this other 700 going in. So
So what's the
it's
total?
not gonna deplete.
That's what I'm like, I was just trying to conceptualize, do we have enough theoretically without that 3/4 mil to cover us?
So I'm gonna say that there's 500, Cheryl, is that what we talked about this year?
I believe so.
So we're gonna eat up, I'm gonna guess we're gonna eat up a pretty good chunk of that with this fire door project. I'm not gonna say how much, but I'm gonna say, I believe we can eat up a pretty good chunk of that.
Yeah.
Scott?
Just remember 3 years ago, we were gonna go for a $21.5 million bond. I happen to remember coming in and sitting in the front row when I wasn't on the board and asking the board members and Joe Fromberg where all the money was that taxpayers pay. And he always said that we never had a surplus in the school because taxpayers wouldn't allow us. Well, I think it's time that we start doing it. I mean, try to cut some of these bonds, try to cut some of these loans. If we have the money, put it in there. Taxpayers, if they see that it's at our disposal, and it's not just getting handed out and picked apart 1,000 here, 1,000 there, then we can fix things without having to pay interest and go to bond. And bonds, as we know, are not going to pass.
It does worry me to have an increased budget vote, a vote for an increased budget, and then a vote for a surplus. Maybe I just have budget defeating trauma from last year, but I feel like as a taxpayer, you're gonna look at it and say, you're asking for all this more money and you have this money here. That
I think I got a solution to the problem. I'm gonna make Cheryl
budget
cry.
trauma.
So what you would do is you would increase this budget you're about to vote on by the amount in surplus, and then you roll that surplus into next year's budget.
It gets lower.
Yeah.
So you increase what you're about to vote on, which is next year's budget, by the 773,000. So that the taxpayers are putting that money in, and then the surplus rolls into next year's, the budget we're about to vote on. And then it's a wash, it's a zero.
Is that the coupon thing though?
And then people aren't voting, and people aren't voting then on a separate line item in terms of what to do with the surplus fund.
So we have it as a revenue, we have it as an expense.
Budgets never go in reverse.
Yeah.
So your literally your budget proposal, the two budget proposals, by doing this, they wouldn't change. All that's happening is we're taking advantage of the loophole.
And essentially on the budget spreadsheet here, the number for.
Numbers will change. But
Yeah, the number that we're putting into the capital reserve fund goes up by $750,000.
But it's not gonna change their tax rates.
Exactly. It doesn't change anything for the taxpayers because we're rolling in the money we already have.
So
But what you see on the ballot is
You need
big
time to
numbers.
think it through.
That's true.
I mean, would the taxpayers realize that we weren't asking them for more money? Because
Well,
they'll
they're not gonna see
see but they'll see the budget number.
No, we're talking about it publicly. They know what we're thinking about. But again, it's to try to address the issue that if people see that 773,000 as a separate article in the morning, they might get confused about what it is. You went for a bond last year. Some of them might look at it and go, oh my God, they're asking for a $750,000 bond. And so this is a way to avoid that confusion.
But Lane, the number's still going to go up in the budget, the final number. And how many school budgets do you actually see go back down for next year and the year after?
No, they're gonna be going up until the state gets its act together.
But that's what I'm saying. If you're adding on the $700,000 onto your budget, it's never going to come out. We're going to have to make up that 700,000 next year.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, actually, there might be a benefit there. You're gonna put you're gonna put the money in and take it out in the same budget year, so it's a wash. Doesn't affect people's taxes. But
No,
because.
but you're still, what I'm saying is your whole number, your sum that you're asking for is gonna go up $700,000. Next year, when you go for your budget, you're gonna add more onto that extra $700,000 that was already put in this year. The budgets never go in reverse. You and everybody in that room knows that.
Yeah, just that you never see budget numbers over, it's like next year's budget would be less 700,000. So that's what he's saying. So they.
Level funding would be plus stuff.
Of course, we only report expenses, right? So that's the flaw. So we'll have to think about it, but yeah, it's a good point, Scott. I appreciate that. Yeah. Just a moment.
My hypothetical brain now is.
Yeah, I got you.
Spinning.
I got too many options.
But that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But it's
That's why
not.
they call it the art of a guess.
Yeah.
Damn brain
I learned that
shouting.
in Nearly
Yeah.
Fairly.
Shells.
But
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not a scientist.
There we go. All right, let's see if I can get it.
Yeah, so it's a 17% increase if you do that.
Yeah,
So
good.
your team expenses.
117.
But their tax rates would change. We'd have to show it on the expense side of things, and we only report expenses. I don't know why they make us do that. Yeah, let's think about it on Tuesday.
Well, we don't. I mean,
Yeah.
we have to decide because if we're gonna put it to the taxpayers, it's not one.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe just because I'm a preparer, so that's where I'm coming from, is like, I wanna have money for that, which I know is coming. And another expense we talked about recently. I would vote to put it in our reserves. You know, I understand what Kate's saying, you know, just like a lesser loan. And it's, again, with the hypotheticals, it's hard to imagine like how much interest would we be paying on top, and like, you know, with that. I don't know like what that would amount to, so it's hard to make that decision. I mean, I guess I like the idea of putting it in the reserve fund for, like I said, at least the two big things we know are coming.
If we did ask taxpayers to put it into this reserve fund, would we still have the option of using that money to reduce the amount of a loan in the future? Is that not?
If it's a facilities loan.
Okay.
Yeah, has to be for facilities.
I mean, we can't roll it into, is there an option to just put it in the capital reserve where we're avoiding the vote? Because, or is the
That's
vote,
putting it in the budget. You could do a lesser amount and leave some in the surplus.
A lesser amount into the reserve and then
Well, like have the options of you can,
combo.
Roll, take half of it, put it in the reserve fund, and then the other just rolls in. They don't have to vote on what rolls over.
rolls into the capital?
No, it
No,
just rolls, it
into
just
the
stays
next
in the
year's budget.
surplus as a fund balance,
Okay.
and then in next year's budget, we can address it. This will be the first time that taxpayers have actually seen this, so it is gonna be something that is gonna have to be.
Lots of education.
And they voted on putting stuff in the capital improvement fund before.
It's been a while.
I thought we put stuff in there every year.
Yeah.
We do it through the budget, but not.
Oh.
It's an individual vote.
As part of money we already had.
Is there anything in this budget right now for capital?
Yeah,
400,000.
Yeah, I think I still feel like,
We should add some of it.
huh?
I think we should add to that. I think we've got some incredibly expensive projects that are related. I would like to be able to pay for it out of pocket.
Agree.
Yeah,
So you're for putting it in the budget or putting it on the ballot?
Putting it on the ballot, trying to get it into the reserve.
And then we're just gonna have to do heavy education that this already is here. We're not asking for more. It's just prevent,
We're trying to protect it.
protect it.
Well, I mean,
Maybe in
this
the
is a way
wording
to-
of the warning too.
Right. Yeah.
We had an excess amount of money, but the taxpayers agreed to put this excess back into the budget via,
So we have to be specific on the warning, so that part you're talking about comes with education.
it comes what?
What is it?
With education.
What's the warning that should be?
Shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified District approve of the transfer of $773,507 in surplus funds for the year 23-24 school year to facilities reserve?
Most people should understand that.
And I think people who've been paying attention know the disrepair with some of the buildings or the issues in the buildings that need to be addressed, and this is how we're trying to do it as opposed to a $20 million bond.
And that
Can
can
you
be something committee, like, that becomes like a huge focus.
Sure.
The next couple of, banners, and then, the board really just hammers the education and the social media, and just to let them know that this is not an additional act.
Can you put something in for like on the ballot that says, that we're using it for if something major breaks down?
No.
But that would be in the explanations during the forums and the articles that would go out.
Because we can't even explain the budget, and one of the things before you vote on it is that we have to, on the ballot, it says the increase of the cost per pupil over last year. So with option one, it's a 20.98% increase over last year. And in option two, it's a 18.14% increase over last year. That is not the budget increase, it's increase to the cost per pupil. But it's not, it's explained.
Slightly off subject, are these ballot rules, local select board or legislative?
Legislative.
They actually took that language off during COVID because they didn't want to freak people out. And then when costs were going up, they put it back on.
Yeah, and when the long-term weighted membership dropped last year, they had it pulled up because it was really skewed. Because everybody was in the negative. But it's back.
I guess I just think about the conversation that you had about the chronic conversation, budgets go up, but the scores go down. And I think about putting $700,000 surplus, the entire surplus into facilities and none of it going into students. I know students need a place, they need a boiler, they need heat. I understand that. I would advocate that if we do the surplus into capital reserve, that it is not the entirety of the $773,000. We've already got $400,000 in the budget.
Right.
We've got $500,000 in there right now that, yes, the doors are gonna eat up some of it, but I have an issue with all of it going into buildings and none of it going into student outcomes.
This is a rudimentary question, kind of late in the game here, but if we were to roll some of that over to subsidize the budget for next year, the number that goes in front of the taxpayers doesn't change, right?
Put it toward the budget, it will change.
But on the ballot, the actual number on the ballot.
You only report expenses, so the total dollar amount won't change, but your percentage would.
Your cost per pupil. will go
Yeah.
down.
Cost per pupil will go down.
That's what, and then your corresponding
And
percentage.
the other piece is neither of these budgets pushes us over the threshold, right? So there's the talking logic. If it's not putting us over the threshold, so it's not excessive.
Yeah,
It just means you're catching up because you were a little behind.
I'm just thinking, if I was going into the ballot box, looking at this, I haven't seen any of the wonderful outreach committee things, I haven't gone to any of the forums, and I'm just looking at the numbers. Is that number gonna change based on this surplus rolling in or not rolling in? It would change, okay.
And even with the outreach, you're not gonna do.
Oh, yeah,
Right,
oh,
exactly.
don't I know.
Yeah, I worry about people going to the ballot and saying, and the thing that they take away from it is, oh, look at this, we have $750,000 that we didn't spend.
Mm.
we're still asking you for money, but we have all this money, and then, people living paycheck to paycheck, a lot of people in poverty, and that idea that we have money we're not spending, we're asking for so much more, it's unpalatable. I know that it can be explained, but at the same time, it's, oops, we have too much money.
I hear
We
you.
don't know what to do with it now.
A lot of this money came from COVID year.
I know.
We've been
I
carrying
know, I'm
it.
just looking at optics, I'm just looking at how. it's
No, I understand.
Cheryl,
I mean, it-
you mind if I put my 2 cents in? Well, maybe not. So we looked at option 1 and we looked at option 2. Option 1 is obviously the better option, because it has more money in there. What if we rolled over just the difference to bring option 1 down to the level of option 2 and put the rest in the capital reserve? Could we do that? And what I'm hearing you say, that would bring our cost of people down as well.
It would bring it down to what option 2 is, yes.
Because that would be easier to explain to, well, maybe not, but if you could explain that as well and say, well, we have these 2 options, both which don't put us over the threshold. We obviously want the Rolls Royce option, not obviously, but it would be good to get. But if we rolled over the amount of this difference and then put the rest in the capital reserve, then we're doing a bit of both, and that's not that hard to explain.
What would the number be?
415 would get rolled
357, 936.
into capital.
Like that.
357 what?
936.
936.
To capital. And then we already have another 400 that we're budgeting to go. Yes. All right.
So the
Yeah.
400 would go into the reserve.
So we'd be around 7.
Where's the 300? The 300 would go into the reserve. The 415. So you show.
300 would go into reserve, not capital. Is that's my.
300 would go into the reserve, the 415 would be the rollover into next year. So that, yeah, John had a good example. but-
it's clean. Makes
But you
sense.
should have used Bentley, because isn't that an English car? You're getting a Bentley for a Cadillac price.
Well, you said Honda the other day, I'm like, I really
Yeah,
want a
it's
Honda.
much more,
There's nothing wrong with that.
it's more of a Honda.
Well, because then that money's being used to support
So
the kids.
400, so 415 would get rolled over, surplus would get rolled over to reduce.
The subsidized taxes for next year. The 300,000 would go into reserve, and that would give you option 1 and options 2's cost.
Okay, and then we would have the risk. Is that more palatable to the board?
And so we get excellence, but we would
Yeah.
be paying for level.
And then we
Is
get all
that right?
those, we get all those educational pieces.
Right,
Yeah.
those
In
are what Kate was
addition to.
Having
And then we
reserve.
would have the reserve plus 4 being budgeted, and what's currently in capital? 400.
Oh,
500.
500 is currently in capital, 514.
For the attic.
400 plus the 300. Next.
Then the federal
We get
government will make
access.
a good
But
choice.
you also have to remember,
Right.
the following year, we're gonna have to raise an additional, if the budget's the same or higher, we're gonna have to raise an additional 415 in tax.
Right,
It's come down from 5 to 415 now, so maybe we'll get it down to 3 next year, and then 2 the year after.
That's only if you have
Yeah.
the capital
Surplus.
surplus to do that.
There's also the possibility that we get USDA grant funds and we get reimbursed by FEMA, and some of these one-time expenses for setting up preschool and doing the addition project aren't included in that budget. Even though I know the budget numbers never go down.
And the federal government could
Could
not
not
cut.
do, there's a lot of things that could save us money, which
Wouldn't it be amazing?
might help with that step down cliff issue. I think this, in my personal opinion, I think this is a nice balance between supporting the kids, trying to get our test scores up, if that's how we want to look at it, whatever. And also making sure that Todd isn't hung out to dry, a year down the line.
It's not just Todd.
Not just Todd, but he's in the room right now, so I'll address it. But
He's one of us to tell us that we're all.
yeah, exactly. I wouldn't want to be the issues. For me, it's a nice balance.
What do you think, Cheryl? Morning.
You could just, if you just change the numbers on it, you can still read it. And they could vote on it. And they should sign up.
We can emphasize that performance piece.
Right, I agree.
Your point was brought up, we talked about performance and quality of the program. I think we can talk about that now.
You go. And, all right, so Sharon, you don't think that we're creating any type of problem? I mean, you are, I mean, you're the subject matter expert in the room, so.
So you are creating a clip for next year, the 415, if you don't have another surplus to roll for.
Yeah,
As
coupon.
long as you know that. That we're using our 415 coupon this year, will expire at the end of this year.
Just like 500.
Yes.
Everybody clear on what we're talking about? Scott, can you hear it all?
I hear it all.
That potential cliff next year, I think is a little bit, to me, seems a little more palatable than
It's a little smaller than what.
than underfunding the reserve and then getting stuck with a larger bill that'll cripple a school.
Yeah, it would make us take out a loan.
Right.
We still have new contracts.
Okay. All right, so do we have to wait for Cheryl to give us numbers? I think that it sounds like we've come to a consensus on two things about how we're gonna go about this.
Requests are urgent.
Okay.
That's right. So we can vote on it and then I can figure out how to get it printed here. Yeah.
Yes.
Before anybody goes and makes a motion, I get all of those numbers from Cheryl first, because y'all talking about this.
I think we need number two. I kind of lost it.
Yes.
Say I ever had it, so.
Keep trying, keep trying.
Do you guys want to take the break? What do you think?
Breaker.
I could use a drink of water, yeah.
But no, this way, she can double check.
All right, so it's 7:27. Why don't we take a 5-minute recess?
Sure.
Yep.
Thank
Okay, so unless there's any more questions about the numbers or thoughts, we're gonna, I think we need to actually vote on the budget. We need to vote to accept the budget before I read it. Okay, all right. So actually, I'm gonna need someone to make a motion and with the numbers, then I can read
You just really have to do the budget number.
The big one.
the big one. So it's the Green Mountain budget first, and then I'll read the warning for that.
Let's see, do I read the whole Article 1?
No,
Just,
No, just a motion that the Green Mountain Board, that.
okay. The Green Mountain Unified School District Board is proposing the school, is proposing to expend $18,627,678, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year.
So the board is, the vote on the table though is that we approve.
Right.
Somebody needs to
Motion
make
to
a
A
motion.
motion to
Are you making
approve
that motion?
18
Oh,
million,
yes, I'm making
627.
the motion
Gotcha.
to approve. To approve that the school board expend $18,627,678.
That's all you need.
All right, is there a second?
Say two.
Okay, so Lois, Casey, okay, is there any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
So we have to do a roll call.
Lisa,
No.
Casey,
Yes.
Chuck,
Yes.
Lois,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Kate,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Adrian.
Yes.
Motion carried with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 to 1.
Okay, all right. Should I read the warning now or at the end? Matter. Let's get that out of the way. Read the whole part, yes.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to read the warning for voting by Australian ballot on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Legal voters of Green Mountain Unified School District, consisting of the towns of Andover, Baltimore, Cavendish, and Chester, are hereby warned to meet at their respective polling places on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, for the purpose of voting by Australian ballot. The business to be transacted includes the following. Article 1. Shall the voters of Green Mountain Unified School District approve the school board to expend $18,627,678, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. The Green Mountain Unified School District estimates that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in per pupil education spending of $14,603.21, which is an 18.14% higher than per pupil education spending for the current year. Article 2 or 11?
It's 11. Oh, usually it follows that. Go ahead.
So was it 2?
Yeah.
Okay,
It's
so
supposed to be
Article
round
2,
numbers.
shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve the transfer of $357,395 in surplus funds from the 2023-2024 school year to the Facilities Reserve Fund. Article 3, election of school directors. Approved at a duly warned meeting on January 16th, 2025.
Not approved yet.
Oh,
Yeah, you're reading the warning, but they have to vote to accept the warning.
okay, sorry.
Yep.
Question, accept the warning as read.
So I move to accept the warning as read.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So now,
Okay.
The 2 and 3.
okay. So now it's approved at a duly warned meeting.
Cheers.
Okay.
Jeez.
What is the per pupil spending last year?
That's what it's.
This is 18% more.
It was $12,361. But you also had a higher, I think 1203 for students, and now you're down to 1184.
The number of students went down.
Right.
That's what's happening. Yeah.
So
Should we
sign it? Should we wait?
Wait, I'm gonna reprint it.
Okay.
Oh,
Cheers.
I can read the other one last.
okay, so while they're fixing that, we'll read the other warning.
So this warning is for the annual school district meeting that will take place on Thursday, February 27th at 6 p.m. in Green Mountain Union High School. The legal voters of Green Mountain Unified School District, consisting of the towns of Andover, Baltimore, Cavendish, and Chester, are hereby warned to meet to transact at that time business not involving voting by Australian ballot or voting required by law to be by ballot. The business to be transacted at this meeting includes the following. Article 1, to elect a moderator for a one-year term beginning July 1, 2025. Article 2, to elect a clerk for a one-year term beginning July 1, 2025. Article 3, to elect a treasurer for a one-year term beginning July 1st, 2025. Article 4, shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve setting its annual honorarium for each of its school directors at $1,200. Article 5, shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve setting its annual honorarium for the treasurer at $750. Article 6, shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District approve setting the annual honorarium for its school district clerk at $125. Article 7, shall the voters of the Green Mountain Unified School District authorize its Board of School Directors to borrow money pending receipt of payments from member towns as provided in Title 16, Chapter 11, Subchapter 711, by issuance of notes of money orders payable not later than 1 year from the date for the purpose of paying its expenses. Article 8, to hear and act on the reports of the Green Mountain Unified School District Board of Directors for the school year ending June 30th, 2024. Article 9, to transact any other business deemed proper when met, not involving the expenditure of school district funds or any other business acted upon in the preceding articles. Article 10, to establish a new date for the annual meeting. Yes,
Motion to accept the motion to accept the warning as read.
So
Also, Casey. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we'll get this one signed and then you're printing.
It's going around already.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yes, this is the wrong one because it says article. I put it in, fine. Scratch.
So the other one's circular.
No, you signed it.
Yeah, I do. But then it was enough.
So this is the correct one. And I think last year they were able to do the signatures electronically through the pen. Okay. All right, so while that's going around, let's move on because we still have a fairly full agenda. So let's move into committee reports.
Okay, so that's RBTC, there's this. We voted the vice principal to become the superintendent. That was really the most significant thing that happened at our meeting. Also, you know, the money is the same problem. You know, we've raised tuition to our sending schools, which includes us, by, I forgot my notes, so you'll have to, I have to apologize, I'm guessing, but it's about 9%. And the only thing I can say is that of all of the tech centers in the state, we're probably, I think, just 2 from the lowest in terms of how much we charge. That's
Thank you. The TRSU board, again, as usual, much of what we've already discussed in this meeting was discussed at TRSU and presented by Lane. There was the update on negotiations, which I guess you already did let us know. TRSU voted and approved a budget of, unless some number has changed that I'm not aware of, $11,384,025. And then the TRSU also adopted policy governance. And so we will be taking next steps over the next couple of meetings to get that up and running. What's the big news from TRSU? Did transportation meet? Okay, and then outreach.
Yeah, we had a good meeting as always. Approved the board bulletin, which I sent to Lane, and I didn't hear back from you. Yeah, I mean, you had nothing going on over the past week, so I didn't want to throw you under the bus. But at this point, we're meeting next Tuesday. There's going to be a fresh board bulletin. It's going to be much more pertinent to what's going on right now anyways. Because of the holidays, we were 3 weeks behind, so I didn't think it was a big deal. I also didn't send a follow-up email, so that is really on me. The more interesting stuff was thanks to Julie Parra's excellent work with the really interesting survey. We started looking at a lot of information on how our websites are being used. Interestingly enough, there was about 63% of people, I believe, rated the websites at a 7 or above on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of usability. So that's pretty good, but there were responses all across the board. So We're gonna be diving a little deeper into the data to look at, are there any specific things that people are having trouble with? We got over 60 responses, right? 61, which was pretty awesome.
Is the survey closed?
Not,
We did not close.
yeah, not technically.
I don't know if everybody on the board got it. I know, like, since I don't have children in the district, I don't get to know.
Yeah, we did talk about that last time, and I think we were gonna forward it to board members directly to make sure they had a chance. So we don't-
Okay.
If you shoot me the link, I can do another out to everybody in the.
I can do that.
Or you can do, okay, yep.
You want me to just send it to the board?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's great. We're gonna be kind of diving in a little more granularly, looking at, what are people having specific issues with? And trying not to change things that are working well, basically. But it was really interesting. Huge thank you to Julie.
Just as we're coming into budget season, would you guys be interested in maybe focusing on the education and really, I don't know if we can do like extra bulletins or, some sort of weekly.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys feel about that. That's an ask.
I think if there was a way that it could be set up like this is this week's event, budget events or something like that, and we could get it out a little more consistently, I think it'd be great.
And maybe some education about the article that'll be there to vote on. That'll be very helpful. And I will volunteer to help.
Sure. Yeah, we're doing next Tuesday, right?
Yep.
So I get one Kelly.
Be great to, like link in 90-second video or something, just a quick video, like a TikTok video from Lane. I just think there's a
I'm
lot.
not dancing.
I'm sorry. Man, so we're all gonna need something to watch. No, just thinking that a lot of people now are learning more from those quick sound bites as opposed to reading something. And so reading something and having a little sound bite, especially if you're gonna do it weekly, this is this week's budget address by Lily or Cheryl.
We're kind of very recently wondering about how we could interact with social media more as kind of a more consistent thing that wasn't so kind of rigid and structured in once a month. I would have to dive into the board's policies to really figure out how that could work, but it might be something we're talking about during the next meeting anyways. So I think the more stuff we can get out there, the better, really.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, that brings us, unless there's more from anyone, that brings us to our first public comment. Is anybody online? Okay.
Randy Miles, Chester. I want to start off with something that came out during your meeting, which is really good, which is one size does not fit all. What Adrian introduced and what a bunch of you seem to start to agree with and we'll look into is policies. Trying to get to the core of teaching our students, and some of these policies interrupt that. That is really inspirational. And I hope you continue and really focus on that. I have no doubt if there are problems that we, the community, can help you with, we do that, because one size does not fit all. The second thing I want to talk about is the increase. It gets tricky, I know, because you're in between a rock and a hard place, and you don't have a lot of leeway with that. But I do see some things that may really necessarily not need to be on the budget. And we seem to be hiring more and more staff, more and more people for these things. And these are going to be on the budget for years to come, and they're going to escalate the budget moving forward. These increases of 307, 356, or whatever per 100,000, that's big for people. People on fixed incomes, people with low incomes. I'm a single father with a house. I'm on a very tight budget. That's going to impact me dearly. You start losing these members of the community who can't afford to live here anymore. They're going to sell the house, and the chances of an outsider coming in and buying that house is pretty high. There's no formula in there to try and attract families to support ARP. So that's got to be kept in mind. I really think that some of these things, and I think all of the things that you propose are really good avenues, but I don't think that some of these things really belong on the budget. And I'm gonna say one of them is the bus driver. I know it's a tough situation, but that's another member and another, fee that we have to pay year round. Did you ever look into, we have a hired assistant teacher, right? If somebody's out, that was put in last year, I believe, we talked about that. Is there a substitute
On the
teacher?
building side, buildings,
What was that?
a building side.
Well, I don't know if there is or isn't, but if there was a teacher that can drive a bus, and I know some of them do drive buses and stuff like that, that could be worked out with them. In the meantime, at least till we get through the state and figure out what they want to do. That would be helpful. And the same thing, I didn't hear with anything with the teachers from Cavendish. Was there any looking into, was it possible to move any of those teachers up into the preschool situation? That would offset and save a lot of money. Yes, it would probably mean condensing the classes, which will have very low numbers. I'm also thinking of all of us, the taxpayers. Any little bit that you do makes a big impact when it comes time for this budget to go through. I want the same thing all of us want, which is a better school, better teaching, better students. With that being said, I guess that's it for right now. Thank you very much.
No, actually, it struck a thought, and it probably would connect with the outreach committee as well, is remembering that there is the homestead declaration, which might lead into, depending upon income sensitivity, up to $5,600 off of people's taxes. And so I think it's important that we get that word out, and remind folks of that possibility to cut their taxes and even send them the form. To make sure they fill it out.
So I'd like to turn my hat around and be a citizen now. So I know at the federal level and the state level, we hear all the time, and especially here, about test scores. And we hear it a lot, and we seem to gauge a lot on what we community school boards do as far as test scores. I think Adrian brought up, and it made me think that I hadn't planned on speaking during public comment. Adrian made a comment that how do we put forth this size budget and how do we promote this? And I think where we've lost, not here, but as a group, as a nation, but especially we're talking about our community, are the success stories that we have here. We have school board members here, a couple of them anyways, that went to school here at Green Mountain. We have academic All-Americans. We have a student this year going to Columbia. We have student athletes that have had great successes here, national champions now. We have kids that go to postgraduate year after year. We send kids to college. We have kids working in law firms and doctor offices. There are more success stories than there are failures that come out of this school. And I think we're missing those successes are getting lost in the process. So I just felt that I don't usually like to do this, turn my hat around and be a citizen because I'm employed here, but I feel like those are the talking points when we start talking about this is what we're promoting. We have a lot of success stories that come out of our school, a lot more than the test scores being low. And I know that's what drives education is what people see. I just think that those are the things we should promote are those successes. And if people wanted to know, I'm sure, hate to put Pam under the bus, but if somebody wanted to know what those numbers were, Pam could probably come up with those. And there's a lot of them. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Having attended that LMH meeting, was it last night? I don't know. The LMH meeting last night, there was what, 50? There was a lot of people there, both online, there was what, 50 online. They really did a great job in getting the public engaged. Randy, thanks for coming. And what is there, like 3 public and a few teachers online right now. I think that this board needs to do a better job of getting that word out. And I mentioned this last year during the budget, had a conversation with my husband who literally lives with somebody who's involved. And he had no idea what's going on with the budget, until I told him, which I did. But I think this board needs to do a bang up job of getting it out there, getting people to the informational meeting. You can't just get people to the informational meeting by putting a warning out. Nobody reads that. You can't just get people out there by putting a QR code up at Lee Size and Singletons or whatever. You gotta get PTGs involved, you gotta get the Chester Helping Hands involved, all the various different things out there. Gotta ask Sean to put it out there, a lot more than just a, just a piece to get people to read it. You've got to get people to come out here and listen to that explanation that Wayne gave. That's probably the best explanation of, yeah, you know what? Yeah, you could cut a little bit out of the budget. What's a saving? And I get it, the $300 increase is a lot, but saving $50 at the expense of our students, that's like, honestly, that's like going and buying store brand ketchup to save yourself 50 cents over Heinz, like frankly. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe if I could make a suggestion, maybe Amber, you could, kind of maybe chime in on the outreach meeting and, share some of your ideas.
Will do.
That'd be awesome.
Anyone else? My thing died, so I have no idea if any answer. All right, that's good. Board comments.
I didn't catch it before the approval of the agenda, but, just whoever does it, could you tell them to probably take Dale out?
We caught it, yeah, we caught it.
Okay.
Thank you, though, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other board comments? Scott?
I guess the only one is is there, I know there's somebody on this board or someone on this board that is up for election. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that somebody or some ones are up for election this year, and just curious if they're gonna run again or not.
Does anybody want to disclose?
I guess I will disclose. I am not running.
Sorry to hear that.
If it wasn't a 3-year term, I would run. But 3 years right now is just too much of a commitment. I'm sorry, I love the work, but.
Well, I'll say thank you, Lois.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll miss all of you. I'll come visit.
I turned in my petition.
Is anyone up? Couch?
Not me.
Yeah, I guess I can.
All right. Anyone else on board comments? All right, so on to new business. So, first, the executive, no, I have page 2, but isn't the new business the executive? Am I missing it? Oh, it's below.
Below the next meeting.
Okay, so I guess we don't really have any new business, huh? So then we're just gonna cruise right into old business. So we have an update on restructuring, which I think since we're all here the other day, we all know that we've decided to move forward with an addition for CAES and at this point, a preschool for CTES. Is there any other updates? So I think we could probably change this line to just kind of updates on progress for those 2 projects moving forward. And then we have a policy second read. Everybody get a chance to read it? All right, obviously, I don't know if you can, mine's nice and highlighted. I don't know if yours was, but those are the changes.
Most of them are just non-substantive, just cleaning up the language. Like it would have specific dates in the month, which is hard because sometimes those are Saturdays. So, it was easier just to change it to like the first Monday in April or whatnot. The substantive change that was put in was Article 11 in terms of hardship placements. And so this is really about the fact that sometimes it is better for students if they are allowed to move. So, if you get those, if you get a student that's in, say, Cavendish, they've been there for 5 years, they're doing really well, they know the staff really well, parent loses the apartment in Cavendish but gets one in Chester. It might be best for them to be able to petition and say, hey, this isn't really good for my child after, 5 years of being a part of this community, to have to move to Chester because we've changed towns. It also allows for promotion, potentially for things like, we've identified a student in terms of a disability and an IEP, and the best resources aren't currently at the school that they're at, to allow us to make those decisions. And so those would go to the principals first. The principals would do an assessment, make sure that what's being asked is truly a hardship. They would take a look at class sizes between the two schools and make sure that, one classroom isn't going to become over-enrolled and another classroom under-enrolled. And then they would make a decision. If they make a decision and say no and the parent's unhappy, then they would be able to appeal it to the superintendent, and that's where it would stop. And that was part of Little Mount Holly's conversation, is they wanted anything like that. They didn't think it should go up to the board level. That's kind of the basics of it. There's questions.
Would the money follow the student?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it would follow your normal, you have a process in here so that if you're actually transferring across districts like the 6 students do, right, it's half and half. There's a split on the ADM. I did put some language in there that basically said if it's an even exchange of students, then everybody just does what they're doing, to save Cheryl having to do the paper, right, because it's a wash.
I don't see a number or like something to make F6, or is there a number attached to this policy?
Oh, I don't think there was.
Okay.
Because the policies that you have that have numbers on them.
This is not a regular this is.
Yeah, that's why.
operational.
This is one you
Okay.
created. We should put a number on it though when we renumber the ones.
Okay, all right. So we'll just, when we, whoever makes the motion, just read the title of it.
Yes, most of the other policies are cross districts. This is.
Yeah, most of the other ones are mandatory that the state and federal governments.
But if it's an operational protocol, that's not,
It's
the board
not.
doesn't vote on the operational protocols, right?
The language though that is in this is, says that the boards have to make a determination, I think yearly.
So we should change this from an operational
Yeah, you
protocol
could
to a
policy,
policy with a
yeah.
number.
Good catch.
All right. So we'll call this an operational policy, and then it would be numbered, or I just.
Elementary limited school transfer program
Program, it would
policy.
just, it would,
So let's change that.
yeah, it wouldn't be called an operational.
Because we're changing the name, do we have to bring it back, or
So you could, if folks decided that they wanted to keep it,
with the amendment?
with the understanding that that's going to be changed. Yeah.
And then you'll just assign a number to it as, okay, as you're changing over the numbering
So-
system, okay.
I'll make a motion. I move that we accept the elementary limited school transfer program as a new policy, as a policy, which, the number of which will be determined by the policy committee.
I'll second.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, policy is adopted. Okay, and then that brings us to policy governance. So as always, this is something that I'm hoping to bring to our board. And I'm very happy that Terrace, you asked it. Basically, and I'm like to either start the discussion back up or discuss about adopting it, but it really, I think would help this board function more appropriately I keep harping on the fact that it's a board made up of non-educators to some degree. Trying to manage things that are outside of our expertise. So what policy governance in a nutshell will do is kind of have the, not kind of, it will have the board operating as a board, creating policies that are written in the negative, meaning we set up the guardrails for our superintendent and administration to achieve goals that we define. But, you know, we want you to achieve this goal, but you can't do this and you can't do this. Then we let the subject matter experts do their jobs. So I'm really hoping to bring that to this board. At this point in time, I said TRSU has adopted it. Hoping that we'll adopt it. LMH is going to, they've got some bigger fish to fry. They've got some other things they need to focus on. And they'll address it at a later time. It is okay for different boards to have it and not. And like I said, at the last TRSU meeting, we really can't tell Lane he hasn't done his job if we don't define what his job is for him. And we also don't have an evaluation tool in place. So those are the highlights. I know Kate has done the education. So I'd like to just open that discussion back up if people have questions and, or if people have been doing the reading or feel comfortable with it, maybe get it put through tonight.
I went to the workshops and I think it's a worthwhile direction to go. It leaves the administration to be administrators. It gives us the control to not allow things that we decide we don't want to allow, but it also keeps us in the lane that we're supposed to be in, which is an advisory committee to the board, to the administration, not people who are trying to run schools. So I think it's a very valuable tool, and I would hope everybody would be interested in following up and learning more about it.
From everything I understand, it makes perfect sense to me, just in general. I didn't do the training. I wasn't sure how to access it necessarily, but I did miss those workshops. So I'm definitely curious to do that.
Sign up.
I'd have to ask Kelly.
I mean, if you want the education,
You can still sign up for it.
Okay.
You probably have the email in your email. It came from like a black
Dog.
dog or
Brown
something.
dog.
So it was pretty easy.
Maybe
to
it's in my
miss.
spam or something like that. 'Cause I remember hearing about it, but I never saw anything come
The
through.
teacher must have like a lab because it was like a lab type thing.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I will look for that in my email and I'll certainly sign up for it. But from what I understand, and I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on the general concept, it makes a lot of sense to me.
And and how it will kind of then play out is, should we adopt it, what we would do is the consultant that we hired to kind of facilitate all this would come, we would, she would help us like lay out next steps. And the time frame will be up to us if we want to do this over, one fail swoop like session, or if we want to do it over a couple of months. We would develop these, basic policies, starting with the easy one first, kind of getting us through that process, and then getting, and when we get to the last part of it, which is the ends, that Lane would be reporting to us at every meeting, not every single ends, but it would be, we'd set up a process where we're getting reports every single, month in some degree, whether he's in compliance or out of compliance, what his plan is to get into compliance. That would be like the last chunk, because it would probably be the most involved. So that would be the plan.
I'll say, I did the training and we've had a tumultuous few years on the board, and I did the training and I did feel a sense of relief. Like, had we had that through the tumultuous years, it would have probably been a lot less painful. And so I do support it. I think the lift to get the policies done and then to be open to continuing to evolve policies over time, and because I don't think we're gonna get it right the first time. I think that's what I worry about. So I think we need to be generous in time with ourselves and not kind of say we're gonna get it all done, because I don't think we'll do as good of a job, but get the basics and then continue to evolve. I do think it has potential. And then, of course, we would have guardrails and accountability.
Yep. And then also, I don't know if anyone remembers, because it feels like it was 10 years ago at this point, when I started, my whole goal was to elevate the board so that we were functioning more. And I think that we could also build in, once we're up and running, we would just, review a policy every single meeting so that we just stay on top of it. So it's not, this isn't foreign and we don't fall into a complacency. We stay on top of things, so. But, Jeff, sorry.
If no one else wants to speak, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to adopt governance policy for the Green Mountain District School.
Policy.
Second.
Did I say it backwards?
We knew what you meant.
I'll second. We all understood.
All right, if there's no more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes. Thank you very much. I think this will be a good direction for our board and as the board turns over in the future. All right. Okay, is there any future agenda items that people want for next month?
I know I brought up, last meeting about the DEC coming to present. I'm wondering if the board would rather wait until the indoor air quality testing and the surrounding the source testing, the results come back before we have them. There may be more questions for them and more poignant questions for them after.
Yes,
results
that makes
come.
good sense. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right,
We'll table that until those come back.
okay. Anything else anyone wants on the agenda?
I'd like to thank Cheryl and Lane for all the work that they've done on these budgets.
Thank you very much.
It's much appreciated.
That brings us to our last public comments. Good? You want to?
Yeah, I just want to leave one more thing with you. It was an article that I read the other day. With the people that are involved with what's going to happen with the state and education and stuff, and it's on both sides, on both Republicans and Democrats. We're going to be sitting down with this. Their budget was 2.4 billion, I guess, divided by 85,000 students, which translates, if you divided that evenly, 28,200 and something dollars. Now, they didn't separate what are the special needs and what like that, but that's a pretty high number. And the one thing that came out of that article, that on both sides, they thought the money was there for education. It was just getting spent on their end, on whose end, they don't know. But that is an interesting article that I read. And when you look at those numbers, it gives you something to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
All right, so having added in the policy adopted at this meeting, the elementary limited school transfer policy was adopted. All right, so the next meeting date is February 20th, 6 p.m. here and on Zoom. And then that leads us into our executive session. If somebody make a motion to enter into executive session, reading on the title. And it's for personnel.
Executive personnel discussion under Title I VSA 313A.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, we are going to enter into executive session at 8:14. The executive session, Lane Millington was invited to join the session. So we are back at 2029 now.
I would like to make a motion that we extend a personnel contract and title change to Kate Leaf.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I have another motion to make. I'd like to make a motion that we extend a personnel contract and title change to John Broadley.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so both motions pass. Okay, if there is nothing else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So.
It's always your favorite one.
So that was Kate and Lois. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 8:30.
Aye.